The house had never felt so still. The morning light filtered through soft curtains, painting golden lines across the kitchen floor. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, steady and low, the kind of silence that fills the air when someone you love is far away. Emma stood by the window, her hands loosely wrapped around a cup of warm tea. Outside, the world looked perfectly ordinary. The gentle rustle of trees, a delivery truck passing by, the faint laughter of neighbors in the distance. Yet for her, everything felt muted, like someone had turned down the volume of her life the day Michael left for his business trip. He had been gone for just 3 days, and already the house seemed too large, the bed too wide, the evenings too long. Buddy, her golden retriever, followed her quietly from room to room, as if sensing her thoughts. His paws made soft tapping sounds on the wooden floor, his brown eyes calm but alert. He wasn't just a pet. He was her companion in every sense, the unspoken comfort that filled the spaces where words didn't fit. "Come here." "Buddy," she whispered, her voice almost trembling. He trotted over, resting his head on her knee. Emma smiled faintly and stroked his fur. "You miss him too, don't you?" The dog's eyes softened, and for a second it almost looked like he understood every word. That quiet connection, human and animal, two souls missing the same person, filled the kitchen with something tender, something real. Outside, the wind carried a faint chill, brushing through the trees like a sigh. Emma looked out at the garden. Michael had built the small wooden fence himself last summer, his shirt damp with sweat and laughter. She could almost hear his voice echoing through the yard. Asterisk, you see, Em? It's not perfect, but it's ours. Asterisk now. The fence stood there alone. Emma had always admired Michael's calm energy, his ability to make any space feel safe. He worked long hours, traveled often, but somehow always found time to bring warmth into their quiet home. And yet lately, there had been something in her heart she couldn't name. Not unhappiness, not regret, but a feeling that something deeper was missing. It wasn't about love. She loved him deeply. It was about silence, the kind that builds between people over time, the kind that doesn't hurt but lingers. She sighed and walked to the living room, where the clock ticked softly on the wall. The second hand moved in rhythm, like a gentle heartbeat reminding her of the hours passing by. Buddy followed, tail swaying slowly. He jumped onto the couch and looked at her expectantly. Emma chuckled. "You want another walk, don't you?" His tail thumped against the cushioned dot outside. The sky had turned silver with thin clouds, the kind that promise rain but never deliver it. She slipped into her jacket, grabbed the leash, and opened the door. The crisp air brushed against her face as she stepped out. The world beyond the gate felt wider than usual. The street was quiet, lined with maple trees that swayed gently in the autumn breeze. Leaves scattered around Buddy's paws as he walked, sniffing at every corner. His leash loose in Emma's hand. There was something peaceful about these walks. No conversations, no phone calls, just the rhythm of her footsteps beside his. She often wondered what Buddy thought about. Did he feel loneliness the way humans did? Or did he just live in the moment, content with the simple joy of company? When they reached the small park at the end of the street, Emma sat on a wooden bench. Children played in the distance, their laughter faint but cheerful. She smiled softly, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes. A memory, perhaps, or a dream she had never spoken aloud. Before she married Michael, she had wanted to travel to see new cities, write stories, capture life through her camera. Somewhere along the way, life had settled into comfort. And comfort had quietly replaced curiosity. She looked at Buddy and said gently, "Do you ever think about what could have been?" He tilted his head, and for a moment the question hung in the air like a feather light. Fragile, unanswered. The first raindrop landed on her hand. Then another. She lifted her face to the sky and smiled. They walked home slowly, the rain turning to a soft drizzle. Buddy shook himself dry at the doorstep, while Emma stood for a moment under the porch light, lost in thought. Inside, she dried her hair with a towel and looked around the living room. It wasn't loneliness that filled her now. It was something else. Something like awareness. A quiet understanding that she had been waiting for something more, though she didn't know what. Buddy climbed onto the couch and rested his chin on her lap again. His eyes were soft, his breath steady. "You're my best friend, you know that?" she whispered. He blinked once, as if to agree. The clock ticked again. The same rhythm, the same sound. But for the first time in days, Emma didn't feel empty. She felt seen by a creature who couldn't speak, but somehow understood everything that words could not. And deep inside, where unspoken feelings often hide, a gentle spark flickered, not of sadness, but of quiet change. Something had shifted, something was beginning. That evening, as dusk slipped quietly across the sky, Emma sat by the window with a cup of tea cooling in her hands. The world outside turned golden, the light brushing against the rooftops and melting into soft shades of amber. Buddy lay near her feet, breathing steadily in sleep, the faint twitch of his ear keeping rhythm with the ticking clock. It was in moments like this, when the house felt half awake, that her mind often wandered to the past. Not out of sadness, but out of that quiet curiosity that lingers when the present feels too still. Before she met Michael, life had been full of movement. She had worked at a small bookstore in her college town, the kind with creaky floors, the smell of paper and the sound of soft jazz playing somewhere in the back. Every morning she would open the shop's door to let the sunlight in, and the bell above it would chime like a gentle greeting. That's where she met Daniel. He was a regular customer, quiet, kind-eyed, and always carrying a notebook. He would browse for an hour, sometimes two, rarely buying much. But he always stopped to talk before leaving. Their conversations began with books and ended with everything else: dreams, travel, the beauty of ordinary days. Emma still remembered the first time he smiled at her. That kind of smile that didn't demand attention, but stayed in your mind long after the person had gone. One afternoon, a sudden storm had rolled in. The sky turned gray. Thunder whispered in the distance, and the world outside blurred behind a curtain of rain. Daniel had been there that day, sitting at a corner table by the window, writing in his notebook. When the storm worsened, she laughed nervously and said, "Looks like you're trapped here now." He looked up, his expression calm and warm. "There are worse places to be trapped," he said softly. The sound of rain filled the silence that followed. It was one of those small, still moments that didn't ask for words, only the understanding that two people had quietly noticed something in each other. For weeks after that, he kept coming back. They would talk about poetry, about how life often hides beauty in simple things, the way light falls on an old wall, or how the smell of rain feels like a memory. Emma didn't think of it as love then. It was something gentler: admiration, connection, a sense of being seen. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Daniel received an offer to study abroad, an opportunity he couldn't refuse. He told her on a Friday evening, standing near the store's doorway as the sun set behind him. She remembered the look in his eyes, a mix of excitement and apology. "All right," he had said, and she had smiled, though her heart felt heavy. "I know." For a while, letters did come long, thoughtful ones filled with stories of old cities, cobblestone streets, and late-night coffee shops. But over time, the letters grew shorter, then fewer, and eventually stopped. Emma never blamed him. Life moved forward, and so did she. But sometimes, when the world went quiet, like tonight, she could still hear his laughter echoing softly in her memory. It's like a melody from another life. She set down her cup and leaned back in her chair. The faint rain outside had returned, tapping lightly on the window pane. Buddy lifted his head, watching her with calm, understanding eyes. "You know," she said softly, "I used to think love was supposed to feel like fireworks. But now I think it's more like this: quiet, steady, and real." Buddy blinked, as if agreeing. She smiled faintly. "I wonder if Daniel ever thinks about those days." There was no sadness in her voice, only reflection, the kind that comes when you've learned to hold your past gently instead of running from it. Her eyes drifted toward the framed photo on the shelf. Her and Michael at the beach last summer, laughing as Buddy ran circles in the sand. Michael had been her anchor, her calm after every storm. Yet deep inside, Emma sometimes wondered if a small part of her heart still wandered through that old bookstore. Standing by the window as rain whispered against the glass. Maybe it wasn't about Daniel at all? Maybe it was about the version of herself she had left behind. The dreamer who believed that love was poetry. That every meeting meant something larger than life. The rain grew heavier now. A soft melody against the quiet of the room. Emma turned off the lamp and stood by the window. Watching the droplets race down the glass, Buddy came closer, pressing his warm head against her leg. She knelt down and hugged him, her voice a whisper. "You're the only one who's seen all the parts of me, huh?" He wagged his tail gently. She laughed, the sound light and full of warmth. The memories of the past no longer hurt. They had simply become part of her story, pieces of the person she had become. As the night deepened, Emma felt a strange peace settle in her chest. The echoes of her past had softened, blending quietly into the rhythm of her present. And somewhere deep inside, where memory meets gratitude, she felt thankful for what was, what is, and what might still come. Buddy yawned, curling up beside her feet. The room dimmed into quiet again. The rain now only a faint whisper beyond the walls. Emma looked once more at the photograph of her little family, herself, Michael and Buddy, and smiled softly. She didn't know it yet, but the days ahead would bring feelings she hadn't expected. Emotions that would gently stir everything she thought she'd already understood. For now, though, she simply watched the rain fall, peaceful, calm, and full of echoes that no longer hurt. The morning light came softly through the curtains, carrying with it the promise of a new day. The storm had passed during the night, leaving the air fresh and cool. Emma stood on the porch with her coffee, watching droplets slide off the garden leaves. Buddy sat beside her, tail flicking gently, as if he, too, was taking in the calm. It had been a week since Michael left, and life had fallen into a quiet rhythm. Simple meals, long walks, and the steady companionship of her dog. Yet beneath that calm, something inside her stirred. It's like a faint melody she couldn't quite forget. That afternoon she decided to run a few errands in town. The bookstore where she used to work, the same one she hadn't visited in years, had recently reopened under new management. Something inside her wanted to see it again. Maybe to revisit a part of herself she'd left behind. Buddy rode in the passenger seat, his head halfway out the window, ears flapping in the breeze. Emma smiled. "You're still my favorite co-pilot," she said. The bookstore looked almost the same. The sign had been repainted, but the chime above the door sounded just as she remembered. The familiar scent of paper and dust instantly wrapped around her like a memory. She wandered through the aisles, trailing her fingers along the shelves. Everything felt strangely familiar, yet distant, like walking through a dream you've had too many times. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw him. Daniel. He stood near the poetry section, a book in hand, his hair flecked with the faintest touch of gray. He hadn't changed much, maybe a little older, maybe a little quieter. The sight of him sent a ripple through her, soft and sudden. For a moment, she thought about turning away. But then, as if drawn by something beyond her will, she took a step forward. He looked up. Their eyes met. And in that quiet instant, time seemed to fold in on itself. "Emma?" His voice was soft, uncertain, almost disbelieving. She nodded, a small smile forming. "Daniel." There was a pause, not awkward, just full of everything that didn't need to be said. "I can't believe it's you," he said finally, closing the book in his hands. "It's been, what, 10 years?" "Just about," she replied. "You look well, you look the same." He chuckled. "That's kind of you to say you look." "Happy." She tilted her head slightly. "Do I?" Daniel's smile faltered, not out of discomfort, but from recognition. "Maybe not happy. Peaceful, maybe." She nodded slowly. "That's closer." They talked for a while at first about small things, how the town had changed, how the bookstore had survived, how the years had passed. But underneath every word was a thread of something unspoken, the quiet echo of what they once shared. When she mentioned Michael, Daniel smiled sincerely. "I'm glad you found someone good," he said. "You always deserved a steady kind of love." His tone was genuine, free of bitterness. Yet, as he spoke, Emma felt a wave of nostalgia, not for what could have been, but for the person she was when they had known each other. Outside, the light shifted, turning golden through the store windows. Buddy, waiting patiently near the door, barked once, a gentle reminder of time moving forward. Emma laughed. "That's my cue." Daniel glanced at the dog, his smile softening. "Still have a loyal companion, I see. It's my best friend," she said warmly. "He listens better than most people. Some things never change," Daniel murmured, almost to himself. There was a small silence before she spoke again. "It's really good to see you, Daniel, truly." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "You too, Emma?" As she turned to leave, he added quietly, "You know, I kept some of your letters, the ones I never answered." Emma paused, her hand resting on the door. She didn't turn around, but her voice was calm. "I'm glad. Maybe that's enough that they were read." He smiled sadly. "Maybe it is." The bell chimed softly as she stepped outside. The air smelled of rain and old wood. Buddy wagged his tail, nudging her leg. She looked back once through the glass door. Daniel was still standing there, looking down at the book in his hand. Their eyes met briefly. A quiet goodbye wrapped inside a glance, driving home. The sun dipped low, turning the road ahead into a ribbon of gold. Buddy rested his head on her armrest, his eyes half closed. Emma reached over and scratched behind his ear. "Funny, isn't it, Buddy? How life circles back sometimes." He made a soft content sound, and she smiled. "I guess some people are meant to come back just to remind us who we were before we became who we are." When she reached home, the house felt different. Not fuller, not emptier, just changed. She walked through each room quietly, letting the evening settle around her. She wasn't sad. If anything, she felt lighter, as though an old story inside her had finally found its ending. Buddy followed her to the porch, curling up beside her feet as the first stars appeared. Emma looked at the horizon, a calm smile on her face. In that still moment, she realized that love in all its quiet forms never really leaves. It just changes shape, softening with time, becoming something steady and kind. And as the night deepened, Emma whispered to herself, "Maybe that's what growing up in love really means, learning to let the past echo without letting it haunt you." Buddy lifted his head, his eyes reflecting the starlight. Emma smiled. "Come on, boy, let's go inside." The door closed softly behind them, the sound gentle and final, like the end of a song that would always live quietly in her heart. Absolutely, here is part 4. The heartfelt conclusion to my dog's unexpected reaction while my husband was away. This final chapter delivers the emotional resolution, quiet truth, gentle reflection, and a tone of peace and maturity. It remains 100% clean, family-friendly, and fully YouTube monetization, safe, asterisk, emphasizing emotional honesty and growth over conflict or intensity. The evening sky glowed with soft orange light. As the day slowly folded into dusk, Emma stood at the kitchen counter slicing fruit for dinner when her phone buzzed. Michael's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, you," she said with a smile as she answered. His voice carried warmth and a hint of fatigue. "Just wrapped up my last meeting. I'll be driving back tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" She couldn't hide the relief in her voice. "That's wonderful, Michael. Can't wait to be home," he said. "Tell Buddy I'm bringing him a new toy." Kima laughed. "He'll love that." Okay. They talked a little longer about his trip, the weather, the little things they always shared. When the call ended, Emma stared at her phone for a moment, feeling an unexpected heaviness in her chest. It wasn't sadness. Exactly. It was the quiet weight of realization. Seeing Daniel again had stirred memories she thought were long gone. Not because she wanted them back, but because they reminded her of who she once was. Open, curious, alive with small dreams. But now, as she looked around the house she'd built with Michael, she understood something important. Love isn't always about excitement. Sometimes it's about staying, growing, and choosing someone even on quiet days. Buddy padded softly into the room, carrying one of Michael's old slippers in his mouth. Emma laughed gently. You just can't wait for him, can you? The dog dropped the slipper and wagged his tail. Then, as if reading her thoughts, he walked to the window and looked out, the same spot where he had waited every evening since Michael left. Emma joined him. The sky outside deepened to a dusky violet, the first stars appearing like promises kept. You knew he was coming back, didn't you? She whispered. Buddy gave a small bark, his tail tapping the floor in slow rhythm. That night, unable to sleep, Emma sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. She thought about all that had happened in the past week, the loneliness, the memories, the unexpected reunion. It all seemed to lead her to this quiet moment of truth. For years, she had kept small pieces of herself tucked away, dreams she never voiced, emotions she never explained. She had learned to fill silence with kindness, to love gently, but not always bravely. But now something inside her had shifted. She realized she didn't need to chase the past to feel whole. What she needed was honesty, the kind that keeps love alive, the kind that breathes warmth into the ordinary dot. When morning came, sunlight spilled across the yard. Buddy barked once, sharp and joyful. Emma followed his gaze to the driveway where Michael's car pulled in. Her heart lifted at the sight. Michael stepped out, weary but smiling, his presence filling the space like sunlight breaking through clouds. Buddy bounded toward him, tail wagging wildly. Hey, boy! Michael laughed, crouching to greet him. Did you take good care of Mom for me? Emma stood at the porch steps, smiling through misty eyes. When he finally looked up and saw her, something in his expression softened, that look he always gave her when he'd been away too long. She walked toward him slowly, her voice warm. Welcome home. He wrapped his arms around her, the embrace quiet and familiar. For a moment, she simply listened to his heartbeat, to the rustle of Buddy's tail, to the peace she hadn't known she'd been missing. When they pulled apart, Michael looked at her closely. You okay? I am, she said. Then, after a pause, added gently, I missed you. In ways I didn't realize I could. Smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I missed you too. They walked inside together, Buddy circling around them in happy excitement. Everything looked the same furniture, the same ticking clock, yet it all felt renewed, as if the air itself had softened. Later, as they sat by the window, watching the light fade, Emma reached for his hand. You know, she began quietly, sometimes I think we forget how important the little things are, like just talking, really talking. Michael squeezed her hand. Then let's not forget again. And in that small, honest moment, she knew they wouldn't. Buddy rested at their feet, sighing contentedly, as if confirming that all was well again. Outside, the wind stirred the leaves, carrying away the last whisper of loneliness that had lingered in the house. The echoes of the past had softened into gratitude, and the present finally felt whole. Emma leaned her head on Michael's shoulder. You know, while you were gone, Buddy kept waiting by the door every night. Michael chuckled softly. He's loyal like someone else I know. Say smiled, eyes glistening. We both missed you. But I think it taught me something too. What's that? He asked. That love doesn't always have to be loud to be strong. Sometimes it's just there, steady, patient, waiting for you to come home. Michael didn't reply. He simply wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. And together they sat in the soft glow of the fading evening. A quiet, complete kind of love. Buddy lifted his head briefly, looked at them, and laid it back down with a peaceful sigh. And as the house filled again with a gentle hum of togetherness, Emma realized that every silence, every waiting moment, and every echo from her past had led her here to this tender truth that love, when it's real, never leaves. It simply learns to grow with you. Sometimes, love doesn't speak in grand gestures or promises. It whispers in the quiet moments. In loyalty, in patience, in simply being there, Emma learned. That true love isn't about how loud the world feels. It's about who waits beside you when everything else goes silent. Thank you for listening to this story on Midnight Confessions. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in quiet kinds of love. Until next time, stay kind and keep listening to your heart.